So today's session, reducing refrigerant emissions, we've covered it in the previous sessions about solutions to transition either new store builds or existing stores to natural refrigerant solutions. However, the main source of HFC refrigerant emissions today is in existing stores. And so in order to meet compliance goals, corporate climate targets, other climate targets, we really need all hands on deck or all solutions available to meet those targets. And so today's session will explore other strategies to reduce refrigerant emissions in existing stores and new stores as well. I want to thank our speakers or introduce our speakers here. Ed Estberg, refrigeration consultant with Raley Supermarket, and Kersey Manliclic, program manager with the US EPA GreenChill program. And so first I'm going to hand things over to Kersey to give us an overview of the US EPA GreenChill program. Kersey, take it away.
Great. Danielle, thank you. Thank you to you, Morgan, Jeannie. It's really great to be back here this year, and it's awesome to be on this panel with Ed. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about EPA's GreenChill partnership program in the context of reducing refrigerant emissions. And so I guess next slide. Okay, a little bit of an overview for those that in the audience that might be new and this might be the first time they've heard of GreenChill. I'll just give a little overview, and then secondly, it is the 15th anniversary of GreenChill, so I'm going to be sharing kind of just a summary of the trends that we've seen in the partnership and in the achievements we've seen over the last 15 years. I'll highlight some advantages to being a GreenChill partner, and then I think kind of setting the stage for this panel, the meat of it, talking about the strategies and technologies that some of our partners have used and that have found successful, and then kind of conclude with what we're thinking, and what we're considering for the next few years and the future of GreenChill. Next, oh, great. So as a little bit of an overview, GreenChill, I always say, is 100% voluntary partnership program run out of the US EPA that works collaboratively with the food retail industry, aimed at reducing refrigerant emissions and really decreasing stores' impact on the ozone layer and the climate system. It's really done just through some fundamental ways. Working to lower refrigerant charge sizes and eliminate leaks, pushing for the transition to environmentally friendlier refrigerants, and where it makes sense, adopting green refrigeration technologies and what we know to be best practices. I always point out kind of the three parts of our program. The first is our corporate emissions reduction program, where corporate partners, will apply to join GreenChill. They'll set annual goals and they'll report annually on their progress. The second part of GreenChill is we have a store certification program where we can recognize individual stores that are really meeting the highest standards in refrigerant management and really doing well. And then the third aspect of our program is our advanced refrigeration program, which is meant to promote advanced refrigeration technologies, strategies, really to create that forum for discussion and just kind of share folks, perspectives. And so, yeah, the three aspects there. I believe kind of, looking back, the goal of the corporate emissions reduction program was to focus on existing stores, really trying to find leaks as fast as possible and kind of prevent them from happening in the first place. And then, the kind of the historical, goal of the store certification program was looking to see, how could we design leaks out of supermarket systems and really kind of test out, try some long-term solutions to leaks. And so these are the three aspects of our program, and I'm certainly happy to talk to anyone in the audience, offline in more depth. Next. I always say with this, with this kind of graphic, this is one that I'm particularly proud of. These are our GreenChill partners, I believe, to date. And so really just happy to have a great group of folks part of the partnership. Next, please. As I noted 2 slides ago, GreenChill's store certification program is, again, where we recognize and we certify stores that are really demonstrating leadership in food retail refrigerant management. these stores only use non-ozone depleting refrigerants. They tend to have lower refrigerant charge sizes and leak rates compared to what we see in the average. And as I've noted before, any food retail store in the U.S. can apply to have their store certified for silver, gold, or platinum. It does not require that their parent company be a GreenChill corporate partner. All right, let's go ahead again. As I mentioned, it is the 15th anniversary of GreenChill, so let's just jump right into some trends that we've seen over the past 15 years. A little bit of I think we have a little bit of one animation on this slide. So I always say that back in 2007, when I was a senior in high school, GreenChill was founded, had 7 partners, 4,500 stores. Last year, we just crossed that kind of 1/3, 33% threshold, where we've got a little over 13,500 stores now in GreenChill. So awesome to see steady growth over the years. Next, please. Great, thank you. I believe the industry has still kind of accepted that the leak rate has been hovering plus or minus around 25%. And here what I'm showing is what GreenChill partners have had over the years. We started at 13.8%. There's been some gradual decline, a little bit of an increase, and then back to a decline. What I want to do is, in looking at this graph, I just want to provide a little more color and help unpack it. Again, GreenChill partners have been, about half of what we've seen in the industry, but please kind of keep in mind that our partners have been, throughout the years, they continue to add stores to their fleet. And then we've also brought on new partners. So there's a lot of, kind of awesome nuances to this graph. Okay, and then got to throw in a bar graph. So in addition to leak rate, we're also certainly tracking and mindful of what is the mix of refrigerant that we've seen in the GreenChill partnership. And so above, you'll see what we had in 2007, and then kind of in the middle, you'll see what we had last year. And I think the takeaway message here is that there's been a much broader array of refrigerants installed in the GreenChill partnership than what we had in years past. I'd like to note that in 2010, new production and imports of R22 was prohibited for use in new equipment. So we've seen that trend reflected in our data. And then now R22 represents less than 10% of installed refrigerants in 2021. And really kind of just to sum it all up, we recognize that the GreenChill partners, they've really done a great job in terms of, ozone layer protection, getting away from, CFCs back in the day, and then, moving away from ozone depleting substances. And then today, we still recognize there's an opportunity to do more to address the climate crisis. Next, please. Cool, thank you. In this slide, as I mentioned earlier, we have our individual store certification program. Back in 2008, we had just one certified store, and I think I've got a nice little arrow that goes up here to show that now, last year, we are at 809 certified stores in GreenChill, the majority of which are at our highest certification level of platinum. I also want to note that what we're really proud of, what we're seeing with our partners certifying their stores is, they don't just certify for 1 year. They often, are doing really well and certifying consecutively for multiple years. So I want to note that, we currently have 138 stores that have been certified for 5 or more years. So next, please. And there might be a little animation there. And with that, again, want to kind of show you how those certified stores are, kind of spaced out throughout the country. So we've got, a nice spread geographically of GreenChill certified stores. And then I just want to highlight again, this year was the 15th anniversary of GreenChill. I invite folks to check out our 15th anniversary report that really highlights the good work done by our partners, over the years. And I'm just going to take a moment to look at a piece of what our administrator Michael Regan said that really sums things up nicely. GreenChill is really kind of an example to show that, we can deliver environmental protection and, economic benefits for all. And I thought that was just a really nice take home message. Okay. Just want to talk a little bit about, the advantages of, of being a GreenChill partner and what we try to do as a partnership programmatically. Next slide, please. GreenChill has a strong, really data-driven core. Our partners, will do annual reporting, and then kind of in turn, they get back customized individual data reports across the partnership. This data reporting also enables our partnership, our partners, really our program to track key trends over time. So, really something that, we're proud of and such. I think, this is, definitely worth noting is that, in GreenChill, there's definitely, you have the environmental benefits as we noted, but there's also that, tie-in of financial savings. I just want to point out 2 tidbits here where in just 1 year, if every supermarket reduced its emissions rate to, that GreenChill average, that's about, 12%, the supermarket industry could reduce emissions by 30 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. And then we would be, saving about, over $1 billion in refrigerant replacement costs. So again, there's that environmental benefit, but also, there's dollars to be saved in saving your refrigerant. Okay, just want to make a note, especially this past year with our 15th anniversary, our team was really working hard to update a lot of our information online, update and refresh some best practice guidelines and documents, and really compile some industry resources. And so I invite folks to check out our website. Those resources are certainly available to the public, but also, again, that is, one of our primary kind of focuses in GreenChill. Oh, awesome. And then just to make note of, when you're in GreenChill, we, try to have partner meetings where we provide the opportunity to discuss industry challenges and share perspectives, and really have opportunities to plan and discuss key webinar topics, key things that we think are happening in the industry. So again, we've always, and especially now more so this year, wanted to make sure we have that forum for discussion, since, we recognize there's a lot of pieces and a lot of things, that are going on in the industry. And then, a really fun, I think, and an awesome aspect of GreenChill is what, is our effort to really recognize good achievement. Recognizing achievements where there's a number of milestones in a bunch of different categories in refrigerant management. What you see in this slide is kind of what happened just last month, where we had a number of GreenChill partners that were recognized at our annual recognition ceremony. So here you kind of have the recipients and the various categories and achievements that we had. We recognize, for example, folks that are able to recertify their stores for a number of years, achieving, good emissions rate, improving on your emissions rate, and recognizing also just kind of advanced technologies and such. So recognition of achievement is a hallmark of GreenChill. And then, of course, I just have to make a little bit of a plug of how do you become a part of GreenChill? Well, if you are a corporate food retailer, a corporate equipment manufacturer, or a chem manufacturer, we certainly invite you to apply to join our corporate emissions reduction program. If you own a food retail store, we certainly invite you to submit an application to have your store GreenChill certified. But certainly, at the very least, I think kind of the quickest thing you can do is just join us during our events and join our mailing list. So we certainly look forward to engaging with you and seeing you. Awesome. So at this point, I just want to highlight some of the kind of successful strategies, technologies that we've seen, in GreenChill, that our GreenChill partners have done to reduce leaks. Okay, I think as this list kind of populates, this is just an example of strategies from recent GreenChill recognition recipients, of really what's worked well for them. And so I think, some of these are probably well known to the industry. Having frequent commercial rack leak checks, doing really good regular manual leak prevention checks, having systems where there's an immediate notification when there's a refrigerant leak, that there's an alarm through, that goes through the system, that, a really good energy management system with quick notification. When a leak is identified, making sure that, there's a process for an immediate repair. Something that I thought was interesting was having, just multi-step, multi-verification once a leak repair has been noted to be completed. So those are a few kind of successful strategies, and I think I have a few more. Okay. We've seen our partners, of course, using remote leak detection systems, just making sure that you're using high quality equipment, training, and even really kind of creative technician incentive plans. Supervisors will frequently kind of review leak rate reports with the actual technicians. Again, just kind of having a little bit of that good communication, good mentorship, good dialogue. And then this one was new to me when I heard about it, but if checking really the entire store, if a leak is, kind of exists above a certain threshold, and then dedicating additional time to just kind of review the entire store for a leak. So I thought that was a pretty novel strategy. So I think that's what we've seen, some of the things we've seen in GreenChill. And then, certainly, again, coming off of the momentum of our 15th anniversary, trying to think about what's next, in the next coming years, further reducing leaks is certainly on the forefront of our mind. And so, we want to, in the next slide, GreenChill, EPA certainly wants to, with our partners, kind of figure out what are the coming challenges that we need to meet. I think there's certainly a confidence in GreenChill and our partners that, they were leaders in the past, and they, will be leaders again in the future to making that adoption of innovative technologies that reduce reliance on high global warming potential HFCs and managing HFCs where they are still being used. And GreenChill will stand with its partners and really with the industry to support these efforts. And again, to keep that sharing of, successes and sharing of, just discussion points and topics. And so that's important. And I do want to note that we will, our program plans to set up a number of working groups over the next year to refresh and re-envision a number of our program elements and respond to partner suggestions. So, we're mindful of, for example, our store certification program. There, I think there's an opportunity to do a refresh there. Looking at how emissions of low global warming, alternatives, are looked at in our program. And again, just in the spirit of this panel, making sure that we're doing what we can to continue to push for further leak reduction and such. And so, next, please, Danielle. Thank you. Just to put a little more detail on those working groups that I alluded to, certainly EPA is always open to hear from our partners and industry, and as we kind of work towards the HFC phase down and the AIM Act. And so some of the opportunities, ideas that we've been exploring is, for example, kind of looking at a leak reduction challenge that that we could see to try and push the industry even further beyond the averages that we've already been able to achieve. Again, looking at our criteria in our store certification program, can there be more done there? Again, our partners have always done a great job of being above and beyond. And what else can we do to continue to be above and beyond? And recognizing other parts of our industry, for example, reclamation and such. And so, certainly want folks to stay tuned for that. We're going to be working to stand that up this year. And our partners, really want to work with them on their feedback and thoughts. And again, open to, feedback from the industry. So with that, I just want to certainly thank you, the audience, for listening, for attending. Certainly want to thank all of my colleagues and everyone on the GreenChill team. We really are kind of a team of 15 plus people. So, I certainly appreciate them. I want to thank our GreenChill partners who really do, they really do the work of reducing emissions. I want to thank everyone at NASRC, really, appreciate it. And then it's awesome to be alongside Ed. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Kersey. And before we move on to Ed, just a quick, I think, clarifying question here from the Q&A section. You said that the industry standard for leak rates is 25% and GreenChill members are about half of that. If that's true, why for fugitive emissions accounting is the industry standard only 2%? And I don't actually have more context because I don't know actually what fugitive emission accounting is or where that stat is coming from. Do you know?
I think, Danielle, I will kind of concur with you on that. I'm kind of curious, just for a little more context on the fugitive emissions accounting. I will say, I think, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe there was like some work done as, like, for example, CARB was standing up their recent rulemaking, and I believe there might have been a memo or a document that had noted that the current leak emissions rate in California was about 24 point something %. So I think we're still in kind of the ballpark range for the industry. So I'm wondering if that fugitive emissions 2%, is that something, maybe that might be something ancillary or different. So I certainly am happy to talk to.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, and happy to talk to Crystal more about that, offline. I'm curious if that's might be a different thing or just an ancillary thing.
It looks like it's a carbon accounting thing. Okay, thanks, Chris. Sorry, we don't have a better answer for you, but we could look into that more. Great. So then next we are going to go over. Thank you, Kersey, for a great presentation. We'll take the rest of the Q&A at the end there. But we are going to go next to hear from Ed Estberg on other strategies to reduce emissions. Ed, take it away.
Thank you, Danielle. About in 2010, Raley started looking at reducing their direct emissions. And we wanted to study a couple stores to find out how much progress we've made from that time until now. And the reason we picked that time was that our last store designed with 404A was in 2010. It was a store in Tracy, California. And we're comparing it to the latest store we designed 12 years later, which will be the last one in California with a R449A. And we wanted to study how does the charge reduction and the change affect the direct emissions from our supermarket systems. We're going to look also at a current remodel we did that just finished in this year. So we'll have a look at new stores and we'll have a look at a remodel store. So if you go to the next slide, this is a comparison of the Tracy store, which was opened in 2010 versus a store in Roseville, which we opened this year. And I'll just go down through the changes here and explain them. Obviously, the refrigerant in the Tracy store was 404. Roseville was 449A. We listed the GWP, which is 3922 and 1397. So we automatically get a 64% reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions. The next line is a little more important to us. If you look at the charge on the Tracy store, it was 2,284 pounds, and the Roseville store was 1,011 pounds. Now, you may question how we got so finite on the numbers. And we have a policy that after 4 to 6 weeks of the store opening or the remodel reopening, we take all the gas out, weigh it, and put it back in so we know exactly how much gas is in the store. We don't trust the cylinder weights. They say there's 100 pounds in a cylinder. We know for a fact that it's not 100 pounds. We don't trust necessarily the mechanics not that we don't trust them, but their weighing procedures are not always accurate. And there's always tails left in the cylinders. So to get an accurate account, we feel you have to take the gas out, weigh it, and put it back in. So that's why those numbers are so exact. The total evaporator load in the two stores you'll see is considerably different, 141 tons on the Tracy store and 95 tons on the Roseville store. That number is a little misleading in that the lineal foot of refrigerated case is almost the same. But the Roseville store has all door cases for dairy, deli, and beverage. And the Tracy store had all open 5-deck cases. So that load change is not so much that there's less cases, it's just that we've gone to door cases. And then we use our leak rate that we had in 2010, which we're a little embarrassed about, of 21%. And now in 2021, 2022, we're at 14% is our leak rate. So if you calculate the greenhouse gas potential, the GHGP, you multiply the pounds times the GWP, and you can see that the Tracy store had almost 9 million equivalent pounds of CO2 in the refrigeration system, and the Roseville store only had 1,412,000 pounds. And I'm going to skip that next line because it's not really important for this conversation, but it's just the greenhouse gas per ton of refrigeration. So if you multiply the leak rate times the greenhouse gas potential, the store we built in 2010 was going to leak out 1,884,000 equivalent pounds of CO2. And the store in Roseville is only going to emit 199,000 pounds. That's an 89% reduction in direct emissions. And that's a huge number. Most things, if you can get a 10 or 15% improvement, you're pretty happy with. Here we've got almost a 90% reduction in emissions. So that was a new store comparison from 2010 to 2022. We're really happy with the success we've had in reducing our emissions. Let's go to the next slide, Danielle. This is that same comparison, but done on a remodel. This was the Bel Air store at Sacramento. Again, it had 404A in it, and we went back with a system with 449A. The original system was three refrigerant systems, screw compressor rack. We had a low temp, a medium temp, and an air conditioning system. Same numbers on the GWP, but the refrigerant charge was 2,460 pounds, and that was a function of having 3 racks. But then the charge that went back was only 816 pounds. That is a huge reduction in the charge size. And that includes all low temp, all medium temp, and all the air conditioning in the system. One of the things that made this store a little bit better than the Roseville store, this was a remodel, and the machine room happened to be at roof level. Actually, it was a mezzanine close to roof level, right in the middle of the store, both side to side and front to back. So the liquid line runs from the machine room to the freezer cases was very short. Dairy and deli was very short. So that was one of the things that got us down to that 816 pounds. I doubt we'll build another store with this much load with that low a charge. The evaporator tonnage, we had 113 tons on the original store. We went down to 92 tons on the remodel store. But there's actually more refrigerated lineal footage in this case. Again, we went from open 5-deck cases to a lot of door cases, but there actually is more lineal footage of refrigerated fixture. Our leak rate for this year obviously didn't change. The greenhouse gas potential of the previous store, before the remodel, was almost 10 million pounds of CO2 equivalent. After the remodel, we're at 1,139,000. And again, you go down to the projected direct emissions, which is just a function of the leak rate, and the GHGP. And you can see 1,632,000 pounds per year down to 160,000 pounds per year. Again, a substantial reduction. A lot of this is driven by the lower charge size, but one thing I want to comment here, if we could get our leak rate down another 6-7%, which I think is possible, that 88% is going to go up to well over 90%. And if you looked at GreenChill's chart, where we've kind of stabilized at 12 or 13%, we really need to get the manufacturers to step up and harden their equipment, both the racks and the cases. In our two cases, we build our own racks and we have very few leaks in the machine room, and most of our leaks come from the cases. But we really need some help from the manufacturers to harden the refrigerated fixtures. And we could easily get this to an 95, maybe a 96% reduction. Had we done this 15 or 20 years ago, they wouldn't even be regulating us, because our emissions would not, fixing our emissions would not change the global warming problem. But at any rate, I just wanted to push that we really need some help from the manufacturers to get these leak rates down. And it really doesn't matter whether it's a HFC store, an HFO store, or a CO2 store. The grocery industry just does not want to have these leaks. So can we go to the next slide? So one of the questions you may have is, how did we get the charge size so low? I've had a lot of people ask me this. And so I've listed 6 or 8 things, and I'll go through them. They aren't necessarily particular to each one of these stores. These are things we've done over the last 10 years, actually 7 years. It's kind of funny how we started this was Raley's asked me to come up with a way to reduce our water consumption. About 7 years ago, we were in a previous drought. We're in another drought now, but water was a real problem. And so they asked me to come up with a way to do it. We picked a store in Benicia, California, and put a new condensing system in there that reduced the water consumption by 75% of the condenser water. Well, the byproduct of that experiment was that the charge size went down 800 pounds. And so then we thought, well, okay, there's a real benefit. So over the last 7 years, we've been working on reducing our charge size even farther. So these things that I'm going to give you now are how we, over the last 7 years, got down to an 816-pound charge in a full-size supermarket. First thing is, if you're using refrigerant gas for heat reclaim to the air handler, you need to convert that to water. Put a plate heat exchanger in the machine room, circulate the water up to the air handler. You can easily convert the existing heat reclaim coil to handle water. You just change the headers, the stubs on the headers, so you get the flow right. And you'll save between 300 and 600 pounds, depending on your store and how far the air handler is from the machine room. The next big thing is to eliminate your remote condenser, whether it be air-cooled or water-cooled. Get rid of that condenser on the roof, put a plate heat exchanger in your machine room just above the receiver, and you'll reduce your charge by 400 to 800 pounds. Now, you might be a little concerned about going to water-cooled. You go to a plate heat exchanger, you have to go to water-cooled. And there's lots of ways to handle that water. Our choice is an open tower with an air fluid cooler in series. And the reason that we like the open tower is that we have really high electric rates in the summertime. Our year-round average is 16 cents a kWh, and it goes up in the summer. And we really like to work off of wet bulb for our condensing. So with an open tower, you can very easily achieve wet bulb temperatures, and you will not have any head pressure rise in the summertime. For example, this last year, we had many days where the roof temperature was above 115 degrees. And our inlet water temperature for our condenser stayed at the control point, and very rarely did we even ramp our tower fan up to full speed. So we were delivering 75-degree water to our condensers all summer long. But if you don't like open towers and air fluid coolers, you can buy a closed loop adiabatic fluid cooler. There's lots of ways to deliver the water to the condenser. You can save 400 to 800 pounds by getting rid of your remote condenser. Also makes leak checking a lot easier because all the refrigerant on the high side is in the machine room. Then you can we use a vertical receiver instead of a horizontal. And we put what we call a trending liquid probe, where we put a side probe on the side of the receiver, and 50% is the weld line of the end bell on the receiver. And it gives you a very close monitoring of your liquid level. When you get rid of the condenser on the roof and the heat reclaim, your liquid level becomes very stable, and you can trend a leak. We can go back and tell you what day the leak started. And every Monday, our guys check those trending levels, and they can pick a leak out right away. Another way to save refrigerant is to use loop piping. One liquid line and one suction line to all the fixtures. You'd be amazed at how much pipe you can save, and all that pipe holds refrigerant. We estimate between 100 and 300 pounds savings if you go from individual liquid lines and suction lines to a loop piping configuration. Want to go to the next slide, please? And here's one that might upset some of you, but it really works, and that is to use liquid subcooling. There's lots of reasons for using liquid subcooling. The main one in the past has always been to get better performance out of your expansion valve, transfer some of your low temp heat load to your more efficient medium temp suction side. But the other thing you can do, especially with loop piping, you can design your liquid line for up to, and maybe more, than 15 pounds of pressure drop. And I'm sure all the engineers listening to this will go crazy, because we've always been designing for 2 pounds or 2 degrees pressure drop in our liquid and suction lines, and that's been a rule. But if you look at a chart and you drop the temperature of the liquid by 20 degrees, so if you go from 80 degrees down to 60, you can allow for a 50-pound pressure drop before you'll have any flashing from one end of your liquid line to the other. So, and most of the engineering firms have software now where you use loop piping. You can just draw your liquid line out, calculate your pressure drop, change the size in the middle, go from 1 1/8 inch down to a 3/4 or 7/8, go from a 5/8 to a 1/2 inch, and you can recalculate the pressure drop. And we're not suggesting you go all the way to 50 pounds, but at 15 pounds, we found that you can get at least a one size drop in every branch. And it makes a huge difference on your charge, somewhere between 75 and 100 pounds. And then the other thing we've done, the new store in Roseville uses glycol to all the air conditioning loads. It turns out at the Bel Air store, we didn't do that because the air handler was right next to the machine room. But any of the air conditioning loads, the office air conditioners, the main store air conditioning, meat cutting room, machine room air conditioning, electrical room cooling, if you use glycol, you'll save between 75 and 150 pounds of refrigerant in your system. It's not a lot of rocket science. If you just do these things, you can easily cut your refrigerant charge by 50%. I think that's it, Danielle. I'm ready for any questions that anybody might have. Great.
Thanks, Ed. I'll give folks a moment to stop all their rioting and going crazy from some of the things that you just dropped. while we're doing that, if you would like to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A. And I am just going to go over, follow on a couple things that you said, Ed, and talk a little bit about NASRC's leak reduction initiative. So as Ed mentioned, one of the things that can be done to reduce leaks further is to harden the equipment. And what I want to highlight today is a resource that's available on our website, our leak reduction handout, which was a retailer-driven initiative to look at how to reduce leaks over the system lifespan. So whereas, programs like GreenChill and other leak reduction initiatives look at reducing leaks of existing systems, the question here was what could be done in the design of the equipment, or how could the equipment be hardened, as Ed put it, to reduce those leaks over the lifetime of the system. So what's included in here is some of the top leak issues that were identified by the retailers that contributed to this, some recommendations of best practices, and also an outline of the consideration and challenges of implementing these measures. So why do we want to reduce leaks? A lot of reasons. There's environmental, regulatory impacts, and operational impacts. And as we discussed at the start of the summit, leaks from supermarket refrigerants are growing, and because of the high global warming potential of the refrigerant and the high leak rates and the high amount of charge concentrated in supermarkets, the climate impact is tremendous. And one of the most impactful and best ways to reduce HFC emissions. There's the regulatory impact. This is what's driving a lot of the activity from the retailer perspective, not only the phase down of the refrigerants, but other components of the AMAC that we'll talk more about tomorrow. One of the main factors that is present even today is how the phase down is driving refrigerant pricing. If we look at Europe as an example, we can see that, following a similar but earlier phase down, we saw an initial increase in prices of 800 to 900%. And again, prices are on the rise today. There's also this state regulatory activity. Again, we'll talk about this more in our session tomorrow. That's putting additional pressure on retailers to reduce leak rates. And of course, operationally, refrigerant leaks are bad for business. No retailer wants to be leaking refrigerant, as it's expensive and it's not conducive to keeping systems online and keeping food cold. And as we heard from a number of our sessions this past week, natural refrigerant systems leak as well. Notably, CO2 systems have often higher leaks due to the higher pressures, some of the venting during servicing that we talked about, and the lack of CO2 refrigerant reclaim technology. So for all these reasons, we've been focused on leak reduction. As I mentioned in the beginning, we need all solutions on deck here. It's not possible for all stores, existing stores, to convert to natural refrigerants today. So we need a plan to deal with those existing stores today. So this retailer initiative really started back in 2 years ago, yes, 2020, over 2 years ago, in our last in-person event. We led a kickoff meeting that was participated by retailers and OEMs and others, service contractors, to talk about ways to reduce leak rates. From there, retailers worked to identify some of the top sources of leaks that I'll go over in a minute. We formed a best practices committee with the 6 retailers listed here to develop some proposed equipment specifications that were circulated together with the OEMs and now published in our report. So some of those top leak issues, I'm not going to go over these in a lot of detail. You can read the report, but essentially we broke them out into 4 categories. So there was leaks occurring in the cases and fixtures, leaks occurring in the machine room and the rack, leaks occurring at the condenser, and then just kind of a overall, leaks occurring at the connecting pipes. Some of the measures that were identified, and again, I'm not going to go over these in a lot of detail, and you can read through the report for more on this, but some of these measures would increase cost or first cost for equipment. So requiring a 45 bar working pressure would increase the cost of the copper coil. Any measure 2, any tubing that carries refrigerant cannot come into contact with other metals. This would require, some additional work to be done during the assembly process on the equipment manufacturing line, and eliminating flare fittings on copper tubings, additional costs associated with deviating from what is the norm. Measure 4, eliminating rotolock fittings. A lot of these is where is what makes servicing possible or easier, you could say, but it's also where we're seeing a majority of the leaks come. Adding a temporary gauge to visually confirm that a system is pressurized on site. We understand that some manufacturers are doing this, but it's not consistent. And number 6 is specific to CO2 transcritical systems to specify better CO2 relief valves so that the relief valve can properly reseat after an event. So in thinking about some of the reasons why these measures have not been implemented, it really comes down to cost. So for manufacturers to harden the equipment, as Ed put it, or follow these specifications would mean increased cost of the equipment. They need to be certain that retailers will purchase that or accept that higher cost and be willing to pay for that up front. Retailers, they need to know that investing in those measures is going to reduce leak rates over time. Being able to do an effective ROI calculation, and they can't have that information unless they know how much it's going to cost. All of this really points to a need for standards from our perspective, because if these types of measures were standard across the board, then not only would that drive economies of scale for manufacturers, because they would all be manufacturing to the same standard and decrease costs through volume, but there really wouldn't be a choice for retailers. And so, this is a conversation we've been exploring with a number of partners and, trying to determine the next best step forward. So, like I said, this resource is available also in our refrigerant transition hub. If you haven't checked that out, there's a couple of other resources that we created to help food retailers and their partners navigate the transition. The link is here for you if you want to check that out. And so with that, I will look to the Q&A section, and we'll go through a couple questions here. So first question, theoretically, reducing refrigerant leaks should reduce energy use. Is there a particular refrigerant emission reduction strategy that clearly corresponds to reducing electricity use? So Ed, I know you have a EER that you're using. Are you seeing any kind of correlation with leak reduction and energy use?
I don't believe that leaks increase electricity consumption in the application of a supermarket, because we have a large receiver. The efficiency of the suction pressure of the compressor doesn't go down, and you don't lose compressor efficiency just because you have a leak. So no, we're not seeing any correlation between higher energy and leak rates.
Okay. Kersey, you showed that over time, the GreenChill average leak rate increased or decreased slightly over the past few years. What do you think some of the drivers are that is kind of causing that trend to decrease over time?
Thanks, Danielle. Great question. I mean, I think, you know, I think our partners have, gotten really good over the years at reducing their leaks. And so that's kind of driven that more or less downward trend. So yeah, I think it kind of, really just simply falls on that. I think in particular, the GreenChill partners do a really great job with, how they engage their technicians, from what they've kind of shared with our team. And, when they, are aware of a leak, they're very quick to kind of just address it. And so I think that's been just tried and true successful strategy, one of the tried and true successful strategies.
Great. Also for you, Kersey, so when you spoke about some of the work that GreenChill is going to be doing over this next year and the working groups that are being developed to look at things like, how GreenChill is calculating the annual leak rate. I know something that's come up in discussions with our retailer group is how GreenChill looks at the leak rate of CO2 systems and other, ultra low natural refrigerant systems. Being that we've talked a number of times, it's been brought up in the sessions that CO2 systems tend to leak higher. Is that one of the things that you might be considering looking at over the next year?
I think, Danielle, again, kind of coming off of the heels of the 15th anniversary, and then, there's just a lot of, activity, on whether it's state and federal regs and updates to standards. It's, really, we look forward to working with our partners to see, what needs to be refreshed and revisited. So, I think, a lot of topics, I think we're kind of an, almost like kind of an open field for what, what we look forward to hearing from our partners, what we think needs to be, improved upon, kind of going forward. So, we recognize that's one of the, topics in the industry that we're seeing. So, yeah, Danielle, I think I'm personally just kind of excited. Like it's kind of like an open field for what we want to and our partners want to work on and address.
Great. So you're saying that if the partners want to see something change, then they should participate in the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Danielle, one of the things that we probably ought to be looking at with GreenChill is the leak rate as a percent, because as we start lowering these charges, and then the percentage, you still got the same number of evaporators, but the percentages are going to go way up when you go to a real low charge system.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the lower your charge, the higher your leak percentage could be.
Yeah, the way it's structured now, you're incentivizing people to have 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of gas in a system, because if they leak 200 pounds, it's really a low percentage. But if you take a store with 1,000 pounds and you leak 200, it's a high percentage.
Yeah.
It's just a numbers game.
Well, and Ed, as one of the participants on the best practices committee, can you speak a little bit to the drivers of, why the focus on this leak reduction initiative and kind of what you've been seeing over the lifetime of the equipment?
Well, I think you laid out the barrier to doing it, and it's purely a cost thing. The grocery companies have a buying division, and they're charged with buying equipment at the very best price. And the manufacturers will sell us anything, but they don't want to be priced out of the market. If one manufacturer has a leak-proof case, but it costs 5% more, then the big companies aren't going to buy it. And that's all there is to it. And I think that's true through all the grocery companies, mid-size and larger. They have buying departments who are charged with keeping their costs down, and that's understandable. But on the other hand, we just can't afford to have these leaks, and it's really hard to turn the leak rate and the cost of refrigerant against the cost of the equipment and make that comparison. So my opinion is we need to have an outside body, GreenChill, or not GreenChill, but the EPA or the state regulatory, say, hey, We got to implement these things, and everybody has to do it equally. And then nobody will have an advantage, and it will drive down the cost of those things. Most of them are not, there's not a lot of money here. It's a little bit of labor to be a little more careful about the way you assemble equipment. And then the heavier wall tubing on the copper, and that's not a big number when you get right down to it.
Yeah. One of the photos we used was from a report you did around the corrosion and
Yes.
abrasion that's happening. Can you speak to some of the causes of that you found?
Well, in our opinion, after studying it for 2 years, we had to completely repipe the store. It turns out, and our belief is that it's the chemicals we use for sanitation and cleaning. There's about 35 different chemicals we use in a grocery store. Block white's one of them. There's floor cleaning products. And they have ammonium sulfate in them. They have ammonium chlorides in them. And those fumes are getting into the air, and then they're condensing on the pipes if the pipes are below the dew point in the store, and the acid forms and eats the pipes. Regardless of the insulation system you put on, the acids get in around the pipes. So we've gone to thicker wall tubing, which will give us more years before this occurs. And we're also experimenting with a solution that's put on the pipe before you insulate it that protects it from the acids. And that's been very successful also. It's a little expensive to apply, but we're going there.
Got it. Great. Well, thank you both for sharing this great information. And thank you to the audience. We are done for today. And like I said, I encourage you to join or watch sessions you might have missed on the platform, and then join us tomorrow for our last 2 sessions of the summit, the state and federal regulations session at 9 a.m. Pacific, and then our workshop on utility incentives for GWP starting at 11 a.m. Pacific. So thank you so much.